if I were Francesca to invite you to lunch and say, oh, gathering this amazing circle of women, we're going to go to lunch and the ticket is $250. You might automatically go, $250 for lunch? I can't afford that. That's not what I want to do. I say to you, oh, did I forget to tell you? It's going to be 8 of us and we're going to be sitting down with and having lunch with Oprah. All of a sudden, you find the $250. It's amazing how that works, right? All of a sudden, you will find the $250.
Oh, I will find it.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And you all, no matter who you are, every beloved soul within the sound of my voice, I want you to find the truth of this in you. When you want something, you find it.
My name is Francesca Phillips, and you're listening to the Good Space Podcast, a show where we help you find peace and power in work, relationships, and intuition. Welcome to the Good Space Podcast. Today we are speaking to a very amazing, incredible woman named Rha Goddess. She is the CEO of Move the Crowd, and she's leading the movement to reimagine work as a vehicle for creative expression, financial freedom, and societal transformation. I know that is something we always dream about and talk about on the Good Space, is how can we be successful the way that we feel is success, while also being creative and having that freedom and not feeling either tied down or having that struggle. And I feel like Rha has really nailed that down. And so I'm excited for her to share her wisdom on that. She's the entrepreneurial soul coach behind hundreds of changemakers, cultural visionaries, and social entrepreneurs. She's worked with people like Gabby Bernstein, Arie, Barb Schmidt, and more. From multiple New York Times bestsellers to multi-million-dollar social enterprises, Rha's unique methodology has empowered a new generation of conscious entrepreneurs to stay true, get paid, and do good. She's also an activist focusing on issues of racial justice and equality, electoral politics, and more. Her work has been featured in Time Magazine, Variety, Essence, Forbes, Fast Company, and even more than that. And she's won many awards, including one of the 50 founders to watch by Essence Magazine. Rha, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Francesca, for having me. It's my joy and honor to be here.
Yeah, you truly are just an incredible woman. And I told you before, I just think your message and your work is so noble, and your energy and presence is just such a rock to me. And you feel so solid, and anyone who listens to you will immediately feel peace. And I can't wait for my audience to hear more of that. So I'd love for those listening to hear about where you started and how you began living in concert with the truth of who you knew yourself to be. That's something I heard you share on another podcast. You said that you created a great life on paper, but you were restless. Your soul was crying out for more. And I know so many people listening to this will feel that to their core and feel in that same place. So how did you do it?
I came, and I say this all the time, Francesca, I came kicking and screaming. And I have deep compassion for people who, they get tapped on the shoulder and they kind of go, thank you for sharing. I'm going to do this over here, or they ignore the signs, all of the signs, right? Because I do think it takes great, great courage. And for me, I was, living at the time, I was living, a lifestyle on the outside that looked really, really great. Like there wasn't anything wrong with it. But my soul was restless. And I did know that more was being articulated for me, even though I didn't feel like I could reach for it. And I do think that so many people I talk to, Francesca, they have the ideas. It's interesting. A lot of what people ask me about is, well, I can't find my purpose. How do I find my purpose? And I find that most people are not at a loss for purpose. At a loss for permission, the sense that they can, that they deserve, that they're worthy to reach for the thing that they really want to reach for, that they're worthy to pursue the thing that they're really passionate about. And so, I was one of those people, did not believe that I could reach for it, didn't even know how to reach for it. And so for lots of time, very long time, I did, consulting work, I did not-for-profit work, I did for-profit corporate work. I did all the things, but it wasn't until I was really willing to surrender that life got interesting in the sense of me beginning to put my feet on my path.
It's so interesting. And I love that you use the word surrender. I feel like a lot of the Good Space listeners as well are high achievers. They want to like reach for the stars and do all these things. So, and as someone too, as a recovering perfectionist, what do you recommend for surrender? How can we lean into that and trust?
Yeah, it is a practice, because of the nature of our world. And so many of us are hard charging. And we wouldn't even know what to do with ourselves if somebody told us, go somewhere and sit down. But I'm going to say it starts with being willing to go somewhere, sit down and get quiet and get still. There's a different kind of guidance. There's a different kind of communication. There's a different kind of conversation that happens when we have the courage to slow down. And I know that it takes courage to slow down. I'm talking with a leader right now, an incredible, brilliant leader who is ripe and ready for a sabbatical. And just all of the work of giving themselves the permission to take that time. And the time is so necessary. It's so important. They know they're incubating and architecting something new. They know they're not going to get to it if they continue to meet the day-to-day demands right now that exist in front of them. And just having that willingness to stop or willingness to slow down is the beginning of being able to start to access a different kind of energy, a different kind of intelligence, a different kind of perspective.
I actually experienced that kind of slowdown on my maternity leave. I just had a baby and I remember I resisted tooth and nail slowing down and stopping work and all of these things. And I panicked. I'm like, oh my gosh, life's going to go on without me and I'm going to be forgotten, like all of the negative thoughts. And granted, I'm sure the person you're talking to has way more pressure than I've experienced so far. But I remember at the end of those 3 months, I walked away with more inspiration, more connection, like everything that I did not expect because I forced myself to pause. And granted, I forced myself, but I think moving forward, I want to be more intentional about that. So yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. And in your book, The Calling, you say that you tell people to cultivate a new definition for success, one that includes more money, more joy, and less struggle. That's something that kind of was like, ooh, that rubbed me like, not the wrong way, but I was like, oh, you can have money and joy and less struggle. I think everyone wants that, right? So how would you describe this to someone who struggles to see how money, joy, and less struggle fit together?
Yeah, I mean, we are bumping up against deeply ingrained conditioning that tells us that we have to grind in order to make it. It's very much this conversation is very kindred to the slow down conversation. We're told that more is more, right? And that we should always be reaching for more, doing more, having more, being more. And I think that this is really about being willing to unhook ourselves a little bit and invite in new conversations and new experiences that are much more rooted in the quality of what we want to experience and have versus the quantity, right? And I think we're starting, dare I say, given what we've journeyed through over the last 3 years, I think we're starting to kind of go, maybe what I've been sold about the hustle, maybe what I've been sold about the struggle, maybe what I've been sold about perfectionism and hypervigilance and over-efforting, maybe that isn't true wisdom. Maybe there's something else underneath all of that my soul is longing for, that I'm searching for, whether I can put words to it or not, that begins to become available when we're willing to live a more conscious existence, a more mindful existence. And so the slowing down, the reason we begin the conversation with slowing down is because often we don't have the ability to pay attention when we're ripping and running and reaching and striving. But our opportunity and our willingness to begin to increase our awareness, to begin to increase the things that we're starting to observe and pay attention to, starts to give us new insights about what's possible and what's available, and more joy is available. and less struggle is available and more money is available. If we're willing to consider that we don't have to bleed for it, which is so much of at the core of the way that so many of us have been raised and taught.
Yes, absolutely. So how did that look for you? Because I feel like it's definitely not easy to slow down and to define success the way you want to define it. So was it like you took baby steps and it was just little chunks at a time, and then eventually those times of being centered just got greater and greater? Or is it like, because I know you've mentioned in other interviews that you love journaling, like what was it for you that finally got you to the place where you're like, these are my boundaries, these are my values, I'm sticking to it, this is the way I'm defining success?
Yeah, I would say to you, it's a practice and it's a lifelong journey, meaning, when I began to start to slow down, and for me, my sort of come to Jesus moment came at the barrel of a gun. I was shot at point blank range and had this very outer body spiritual experience where, even though I was being shot at, somehow I was being protected. And I raise this because this doesn't have to be the case. But often what we hear is that people have some big event, a health issue, a divorce, right? A pregnancy, right? There are these big life sort of altering, life shifting events that often almost sometimes have to happen to get us to interrupt the conversation or interrupt the routine. And in my particular case, it was that, like, it was like, okay, got the memo, God. I need to slow down. I need to start to listen. I need to start to live differently. And it was coming out of that experience and doing the work of trying to really heal myself and kind of reintegrate back into my body after that I began to develop this really intense journaling practice. And it became this sort of morning practice where I would just write and I would start asking questions, and lo and behold, I would start getting answers. And so I would even say for people, if you're looking for a place to start and you are open to journaling, that is a way. Another way is just spending time in nature. I know people who take morning walks. Some of their most important ideas or some of their most important insights come during that time. And it's there's a way that the brain kind of moves into this theta state where we begin to get these divine inspirations. We begin to get new information. It's like our brain accesses a different aspect or a different part of our wisdom when we're able to create those kinds of moments where we're not overthinking, we're not overdoing, but we're just allowing ourselves to be. This used to come up for me with driving. So I would also say for people who like to drive, just taking long drives even and keeping a tape recorder next to you. And just as inspirations come, solutions come, right? Insights come, that you're able to capture them. You're able to get them down. And then you're able to begin to engage those insights and engage that new information.
And that's the willingness, right? You're willing to hear, you're willing to listen, you're willing to be open to receive that. And it can come in many forms. Yeah, I love that. And I believe too that God, spirit, source, whatever that is for people, speaks to you the way that you know how to listen. Like for me, books will come into my life because it knows that's how I listen, or like conversations, or I'll wake up at 5 a.m. and just write for 2 hours, downloading all this information because it knows that's how I receive it. So I always try to tell people, don't think it's going to be some elusive, like unclear communication. It's going to be clear if you just, like you said, are quiet and you listen and you're willing. And thank you for sharing that story too. I can't imagine how just, like you said, out of body that was, and unreal. And what an amazing testament to you for being willing to heal and move forward and to do your purpose. Like some people don't get that, aha moment from moments like that. And so I think it's very powerful. So I appreciate you sharing that. So at a keynote session for Brendon Burchard, you said the greatest challenge that you see in people you coach is being willing to divine success outside of the box. That many people think success means trading in our identities rather than a natural outgrowth of who we are. That's profound. I literally had to listen to that and read that multiple times because that has been so true for me in the past, and I'm sure for many of my listeners as well. I mean, I guess we already touched on like how we can begin to see success, as you said, in that's outside of the box. But I want to go to the point where you said you step into the center of the truth of who you are and trust that success is inevitable. And that's the part I'm like, ooh.
That is the part.
Yeah. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, I think, it's interesting again, because I think we're in such a divine and unique moment, Francesca, in that I think that we're clear that the old ways of doing it are not working. We've had enough crumbling of systems and structures to know that the way that we've always done it doesn't seem to be cutting it anymore. And I think because of that, so many of us are looking for new definitions of success. And I think we're in the conversation finally of what does it mean to have work that is meaningful? What does it mean to live a life that is more purposeful, that is more intentional? What does it mean to have those more creative and inspirational aspects of ourselves being fed and nurtured and nourished? And I think this is part of the outgrowth, again, of where we've been the last 3 years. But I will also say to you that I think this idea of succeeding now is even more important when we can succeed as ourselves. Because traditionally what we've been taught is that actually we've got to be somebody else, or we've got to do something else, or we've got to follow somebody else's formula, or we got to meet somebody else's standard if we want to succeed. And I think what we're most wanting more than anything is to just be us and to be able to receive the love and the fruits and the reward and the acknowledgement and the compensation and all of the other things that go with contributing and being contributing members, right, of our society and our greater world. And so this idea that you can find and stand in the truth of who you are and really honor that day in and day out and actually trust that life will get better. Even initially, maybe it gets a little hard because you're in environments maybe where you've never challenged that, right? But the intention is that if you show up in that practice and you stay true to that commitment as a practice, that I do believe that success becomes inevitable, because you then begin to attract the things that are for you. See, it's hard to attract the things that are for you when you're being everybody else but you, right? And it's interesting because we talk a lot about imposter syndrome. This has been a really big phenomenon in terms of this conversation about perfectionism and the way that we all kind of get indoctrinated into believing that no matter how hard we work or no matter what we really achieve, that there's still some part of us that doesn't believe that we're worthy. There's still some part of us that doesn't believe that we deserve it. What I also want to say is in imposter syndrome is the part of us that does pretend, because we don't believe that the world wants who we really are. We don't believe that who we really are is enough to achieve what we want to achieve or have what we want to have or do what we want to have or do what we want to do. And I think that's the place right now where we're on the front lines of renegotiating as we're redefining what success means now. We want it more on our terms now. It's kind of like we've done it on everybody else's terms, and now it's time to do it on our terms.
Yes. And I'm thinking of the person who may be in a corporate job in a big, cog in the machine, or even just systemic obstacles. So how would someone who feels maybe like I'm supporting a family, I can't leave this corporate job, or there's systemic things that are actively working against me. So what does that look like for them, stepping into the center of the truth of who they are and getting to that place where what's around them, the environment, is, helping their success and being who they are?
Yeah, we have to begin to look at what it is that we believe about what is possible for us and not possible for us. And that doesn't mean that we don't recognize that systemic challenges exist. It doesn't believe that we don't recognize that we're in environments where sometimes we feel like our back is against the wall. But if we believe we have no choice, then guess what? We have no choice. So the first thing we have to do, this is why I come back to the slow down. This is why I say that Your capacity to cultivate the relationship that you are having with yourself is the most important thing, because whatever you are telling yourself is what is true. So if we are willing to consider that there's a possibility to start to engage in a new conversation about what's possible that may be beyond what we're experiencing, then we begin to get access to new opportunities, right? So much of our world conditions us to believe that there isn't enough. So we do hold on to jobs in places where we're not being respected. And somehow, and I think this is the deep and challenging part, is that somehow we endure those situations in some way, shape, or form, believing that someday, somehow they're going to get better. And they don't. What we get is more and more of the same. And so what's profound is we have a false sense of hope. And we're reluctant to trade it in for real hope. And real hope comes with beginning to see that you do have choices, even when it feels like you don't have choices. You do have choices. And that there is a way in which the systems and structures that benefit from your suppression, I gotta go here, because here we are, Francesca, the systems and structures that benefit from your suppression, right, have created a situation and circumstances where they don't have to talk you out of your future, or they don't have to talk you out of your happiness. You're talking yourself out of your happiness every single day. You're telling yourself you have to sacrifice in these particular ways, or you're being sold a bill of goods that tells you it's valiant or admirable to martyr yourself in the name of your children, or in the name of the other responsibilities, or in the name of the ways in which you show up for other people in their lives. And we got to start to challenge some of those narratives. We got to start to reclaim some of those stories. And so much of the work that I do, that you do, that we're committed to, has everything to do with starting to offer and create room and space for new conversations, new stories, new decisions, new choices, so that we can start to have new experiences that are about more life and that are about more possibility.
I feel like you just opened a door, and anyone listening, you can walk on through to you know what I mean? I feel like you just gave the permission, and what you said was so profound, so powerful. I hope if you're listening that you feel that permission, and you see that, or feel, or hear, or whatever, that door opening right now, and you walk through. The information you're hearing is what I wrote for our daily email, The Good Space Daily. So if you're already signed up, you'll have these money tips in writing in your inbox. And if you're not already signed up and you're listening to this after the fact of us dripping them out live, we'll make it so that when you sign up, you can specifically ask for these emails and get them dripped out to you when you sign up. And that's the same with all the other topics and themes that we'll be covering for Feeling Your Best. So if you want to get these short daily reminders to access your authentic self in all areas of life and get resources, chances to win things, all of the good stuff, then make sure to sign up now. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to findyourgoodspace.com. There is no time to waste on playing small, to dim our light. And I know that a lot of times when people try to not play small, they can feel fear or shame about it. And it's like, there's no, I just love that you're speaking the possibility and the truth that that's not the case, and that's not what has to be accepted.
The most profound things you can do are the small things. And this is an important note, Francesca, because when I'm in conversations with people, they often say, I'm stuck. And I say, okay, well, tell me what's going on. Well, I want to do this big thing in the world, and I don't know how to get from here to there. So, well, are you getting guidance? Yeah. Well, what are you hearing? I'm hearing this, but I'm like, that can't be it. Or I'm hearing that, but that can't be it. Or that person came, but they don't really want me because I'm not smart enough. I'm not this. You feel what I mean? Like, we're constantly counting ourselves out, constantly disregarding the guidance, constantly stepping over those bridges that were being offered, or those pathways that were being shown. And yet we testify all day long about why we're stuck. You're not stuck. You're just not listening.
I love that. I love that. And hearing you say that, do you still struggle with that sometimes?
Oh, 100%, you all. And I do want to say this. It's okay to own that you're not listening. As a matter of fact, I think there's a source of power in owning that you're not listening, right? Like I had to own. It's why God chose to then bring it in the form of a bullet. I had to own where I was not listening, not being obedient. It wasn't that I wasn't hearing, it wasn't what I wasn't being shown. We're being shown all the time. And sometimes we see, sometimes we don't see, but my experience more often is that we see, but we discount. We hear, but we disregard. We're touched, but we ignore. Anybody, come on, y'all. And so our opportunity is to start to take responsibility for what we're choosing, to recognize that we are indeed choosing, even when we think we're not choosing, we're choosing. And to begin to consider the possibility that we could choose something different and get a different result.
It's funny because I know that you help so many people make more money. And I feel like it is so much deeper than money. Like, I feel like money, and I'm sure you know this, obviously, money is just the like after effect. Like all of the stuff that you're talking about is the work that needs to be done. And it reminds me of what you said at the Business of Spirituality at a Harvard panel, that currency is energy and is meant to move. And I know you probably see and hear it all, the issues that people have with money, but everything you said, I'm like, that's the answer. That's the answer. And so I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just wanted to ask as well, when it comes to money, I mean, first of all, I'm sure that's what you work on with people, right? First is that underlying, everything you just shared, right? Okay. Yeah. And then what do you do from there about helping someone feel comfortable being a receiver of money and then a releaser of money?
Love that question.
I feel like both require so much.
Love that question. And they do. And I think it's, this isn't about, it's exactly what you said. This is not about money. It is about our willingness and our ability and our capacity to love and be loved. Any form of currency is the opportunity to really represent our relationship to source. And that's what sources us. So we start to ask, like, what are we being sourced by? Are we being sourced by something that's infinite? Or are we being sourced by something that is finite? Are we being sourced by something that is abundant? Or are we being sourced by something that is scarce? Right? So what do I mean by that? Are you being sourced by anger? Anger is not sustainable. It just isn't. Sadly, for many of us, we've had challenges in life that we just have not been able to get over. We've just not been able to get through it. And part of it has to do with the fact that we've not allowed ourselves to really have the feelings, to have the breakdowns, to have the unravelings that actually invite the rebirth and the new earth energy to find us, right? And so when I ask this question of the degree to which we're willing to love and be loved, that's really becomes the heart of the opportunity, because our ability to feel abundant in giving and our ability to feel abundant in receiving are direct correlations to the degree to which we allow love and compassion into our life and the degree to which we allow love and compassion to move through us to others.
Wow. As you were saying this, the word brave just kept coming to mind. We got to be brave to do this stuff. This is not easy work. This is not simple. And what a blessing that you exist doing this and that there's others doing the same kind of work, because I know that I could not be where I am without the support of friends, without the support of other people who get it. And just hearing your language, I'm like, yes, that resonates. And I get, like, I hear it, and it's so powerful. And I just hope that anyone listening, that you can be brave to do that work and really dive into that. And just out of curiosity, what made you decide to pick the vehicle of money? Because I know, as Oprah has said, she knew that she was meant to be a teacher and that her show was just the vehicle for the message that she had, right? So like, what drew you to this aspect of energy as your vehicle? Did you feel like it resonated the most with the people you wanted to speak with, or?
I feel like it's the biggest excuse we have. It's the one that gets in the way more than any other excuse gets in the way. And again, we peel back the layers because there's always something underneath, but it's also the one that most people will let you off the hook on. And I really want us to observe that for ourselves. It's like, that's the one we go to when we want to shut other people up or when we want to shut opportunity down. I can't afford it. I don't have the money. I can't do it. And for many of us, when we say it, we really believe that that is the truth, right? Because again, so much of what we've been taught is that this is scarce. So when you get money, you're supposed to hold on to it because you don't know when it's coming again, right? Or when you get money, you're supposed to hold on to it because other people want it and somebody's going to come and take it from you. So there's all of this stuff that lives around money for us that's really blocking our ability to be free. It's blocking our ability to really experience the kind of joy and inspiration that we want to experience. It's in the way of the deepest longings of our soul, right? So we can't give ourselves permission to do what we really know we're here to do, which actually could open the portal to tons of money, because we don't have the money. You feel what I mean? And so we begin this circular conversation that just keeps us bound in more of the same. And so I work with money as one portal and one of the central portals because it is the biggest excuse we want to offer up as to why we can't do or be or have what we know we're really here to do, be, and have.
So when someone comes to you and say, I'm sure you've heard every excuse in the book about why they can't make money or why they can't have it. Like, what's one of the first go-tos that you prescribe, or what's the one thing that you usually say?
Yeah, I say to them, let's talk a little bit about what your relationship is to money. And because I firmly believe it isn't even about money, you guys, it's about what we value. And I'll give you an example. And this is an example I use often. If I were Francesca to invite you to lunch and say, gathering this amazing circle of women, we're going to go to lunch and the ticket is $250. You might automatically go, $250 for lunch? I can't afford that. That's not what I want to do. I say to you, did I forget to tell you? It's going to be 8 of us and we're going to be sitting down and having lunch with Oprah. All of a sudden, you find the $250. It's amazing how that works, right? All of a sudden, you will find the $250.
Oh, I will find it.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And you all, no matter who you are, every beloved soul within the sound of my voice, I want you to find the truth of this in you. When you want something, you find it. You find it. And that's a representation of your power. Like, that's what I want you to see. This is not about judgment. This is not about right, but this is about starting to look at what is really important to me. What am I really willing to invest in? My time, my money, my energy, my talent, my resourcefulness, right? What am I willing to invest in? And it's really about taking us out of this place of feeling helpless and really into a place of power, permission, and agency when it comes to the things that really matter to us. When it's important to me, I will figure it out. And I don't believe that you're any different, right? Maybe I have more tools now to figure it out with, but you got, wherever you trust me, wherever you're working from and whatever you're working with, the minute you sort of commit yourself, there's a famous saying, providence moves, right? The minute we commit ourselves, the minute we say, this is what I want, that there's a way that the universe begins to orchestrate itself in alignment and in co-creative harmony with what it is that we're declaring for ourselves, whether that's the end of an addiction or whether that's a new opportunity or job or horizon we want to be walking towards. And we got to start to really own that power and take responsibility for the fact that that lives in us. That lives in every single one of us.
Yes. And I think that's true as well for when you do have a lot of money, because I know my fear is if I get a lot of money, I won't know what to do with it, or I'll mess it up or whatever. But you saying you will figure it out, And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's also something, right? That I feel we can do as well. If you do get a lot of money, you can figure out how to take care of it.
Absolutely. And there are people who have a lot of money who still have those concerns. So that's the other thing to know, that our fear around money doesn't just exist with people who quote unquote don't have it. I know people who have lots of money, more money than they will ever spend. And the conversations are still there. So this is not rooted in quote unquote a sense of physical reality. This is rooted in an internal sense of being, where we either feel like we're being sourced in a way that is abundant, or we're being sourced in a way that is scarce. And that's the opportunity to go to work.
That's great. And it also reminds me of something you mentioned in another interview about knowing your money truth. I think too, we often feel like we have to go for the millions and trillions, where we would just be happier with simpler. And then that would take that pressure off, because you're actually admitting and owning and committing to what you actually want. And it's not what the world tells you you need to want.
That is exactly right. Yeah, I mean, there have been studies that have been done by financial advisors where they say that beyond $75,000 a year, they don't see any exponential degree in happiness as it relates to money, that money is not the factor in creating greater happiness. In other words, if you get your basic needs met, the happiness factor is not coming from more in terms of that particular currency, right? So it is about this question of what your truth is. Now, for some of us, it is about living very simply. We just really need 3 good changes of clothes and a toothbrush. Warm place to lay our head. We're happy. Maybe a, vacation or 2 with the family. We're happy. For others of us, we're fancy. We want to express. We want to create. We want to, leverage those resources in other ways. And so this conversation of finding your truth is about really taking the pressure off believing that you have to have some number, as your holy grail, as my beloved Barbara Houston would say, right? You have to have some number. It's what you decide it is and choose it is for you. And sometimes we've got pressure to have more than what we actually want. We have pressure to go bigger than we actually really want to go. And so this conversation of what is your truth as it relates to money, as it relates to your work, is an important conversation to foster.
Yes. And I want to make sure I point out that you said we get to decide, we get to choose. We have the power to make those decisions. And that's a very empowering statement to drink in. And I really, really appreciate that. So what is your long-term vision for the work that you clearly are inspired and called to do? I'm just curious, like how do you think about the future and what you want to accomplish?
I want a world where all of us feel the permission to be our most authentic selves in service to our greatest aspirations and visions and contributions. I want us free. I want us happy and fulfilled and ignited. I want us bringing our genius in all of the ways that we've been called to bring our genius, whether that's super mom or super mogul, right? I want us alive, vibrant, ignited, and recognizing and fully in our co-creative power. So, I'm going to keep touching that for as long as, Spirit Creator allows. I will keep touching that in many shapes, in many forms, in many sizes. But that's the vision for me. That's the dream. Anytime I think about what I want, it's always what I want for humanity. That's what is the first thing that arises for me.
It's amazing because you can want those things and still be successful, and I just think it's so cool to see you merging all of those aspects together. And also another thing I just wanted to say, which I thought was really neat, is I heard you, and I think another interview, I listened to quite a few things, but you said that you were used to being the leader behind the leader, that you were always the one supporting the person out on the stage, supporting the person doing the other things. And I just think, wow, thank goodness you listened to that call, because I would have been so sad to not see you and to hear you. And so that's inspiring for me, because I have often felt that way too. Like, I would rather support the leaders or do the thing for someone else to go out and be the person that you listen to. And I'm just like, thank goodness you decided to step out from behind that. So that's amazing. Thank you. So where can people find you if they want to keep connecting with you, work with you, all of the things?
So our home-based website is movethecrowd.me, as in move me. So you can definitely find us there. We're also going to give you links and goodies, because there's no way that we can come here and not do that. And one of the things that we're going to want to offer to your community is just our New Year's message. So every year we gather, and I have the privilege of holding space for a spiritual download about the year at the top of the year every year. And it offers up the themes through which we then live throughout and work throughout the rest of the year as a community of practice, which we are. In addition to being a company and a movement, we are an active, stay true, get paid, do good community of practice. And so we would love to give you all access to the replay of the message, that event we held on January 8th. And just a little peek underneath the tent, that this year's theme is it's welcome to a brave new world. Reclaim, realign, reimagine. And that is what the work of this year is about for us. And so much of what we're talking about today in this conversation is about reclaiming those stories, realigning to what really does feel true and right for us, so that we can reimagine the kind of life and the kind of world that we want to live in and we want to be. So we'll give you access to that. And then, of course, people who feel called to look at the book is The Calling, and it's available on all of the major platforms. And then if you just want to find me at Rha Goddess, that's everywhere. And it's RHA Goddess, Goddess.
Great. And I'll make sure to include all of those links in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can just hop over there and click to wherever you want to go. And before we sign off, are there any good books that you're reading right now, or ones that you would recommend we read?
So I just finished, and this is a classic, but I just finished The Big Leap, which I loved, by Gay Hendricks.
Good one. I love that.
I am in right now, and I'm in the audio version. I have been feeling the spirit and voice of Wayne Dyer. And for those of you who have never had an opportunity to touch Wayne's work, Dr. Wayne's work, there are so many books out there, and I'm right now in the deep saturation of Excuses Be Gone, which is one of his seminal works. And it's really drawn from his time studying the Tao Te Ching, which is another book I would highly recommend. The Tao Te Ching are these little verses. These are things I love little books with big wisdom, and the Tao Te Ching is one of those. So any one of the books, a really great translation is Stephen Miller. And so I'm doing Excuses Be Gone. And then the other book that I recommend, especially for this community, given the conversation we've been in, is The Abundance Book by John Randolph Price. And within that book is a 52-page book, you all. And within that book is a 40-day prosperity plan that is 10 mantras that you repeat for 4 cycles of 10 days. And it's all about opening up and creating more prosperity in your energy field. And so, I could go on and on in terms of books I'm loving, but that one is, especially because we've talked so much about money today, and I want to give you money resources. And then my last money resource is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. That book was written in 1910. So he's getting these classics, right? John Randolph's book in the 80s, probably 84, 82, 84. And then Excuses Be Gone a little bit more recently. It was in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Wow. That was an incredible list. And we'll make sure to link those as well. Thank you, Rha, so much for your time and your message. And I hope we can have you back again soon.
Thank you so much for having me, Francesca. Thank you for your incredible work. This has been a joy and an honor.
If you like what you're hearing so far and feel inspired or changed or just motivated after hearing this message, please consider joining our membership. We work so hard to dissect information and make it simple and digestible for you so you can go out in the world and be a light, connect to your authentic self. And we really want to continue being that landing place for you. So if you're considering even one message or brand to support, we hope that you'll consider ours. And if you want a link for that, it is in the show notes. Now it's time for an affirmation. I allow myself to release old stories and welcome in new possibilities. If you found today's tips inspiring or thought-provoking, share it right now on social media and make sure to tag me at Francesca A. Phillips or at Find Your Good Space, and also weigh in the comment section at findyourgoodspace.com. You can find links in the show notes. And if you have a spiritual or mindfulness problem that you want me to unpack on an upcoming The Good Space episode, or an awesome manifesting story you want to share, give my podcast phone line a ring right now at 917-719-0867. Also, don't forget to download my free morning routine guide. It's what helped me reduce my anxiety, increase productivity, and so much more. The link to everything I mentioned is in the show notes. See you soon.